You know, every single time you chat with an AI or ask it to generate an image, there's a hidden cost. It's a physical cost, paid not in dollars, but in a resource that's absolutely fundamental to all life on Earth: water. So let's just start with a really simple question. Just think back to the last time you asked an AI something. It probably felt seamless, right? Almost like magic, pure information appearing out of thin air. But what was the actual physical price of that answer? How much water did it really take? Go ahead, take a guess. Okay, so the answer? It's about 1/5 of a teaspoon. Yeah, that's it. It sounds, well, it sounds like nothing, doesn't it? Almost totally negligible. A single drop in a vast ocean. But that's the thing, that's the trick. The cost of a single action, it almost never tells the whole story. Because when you take that tiny, tiny amount and you multiply it by the billions of queries happening every single day, the picture changes, well, dramatically. In 2023 alone, AI data centers just in the United States guzzled down over 17 billion gallons of water. All of a sudden, that tiny drop becomes an absolute deluge. And look, this isn't just happening in the US. This is a full-blown planetary crisis, hiding in plain sight, buried inside the very code and servers that are powering our digital world. The demand for AI is exploding, and its thirst is growing right along with it. So check out this chart because the trajectory here is just wow. We're not talking about a small jump. We're looking at a 300% increase in just 5 years. By 2028, the projection is that U.S. data centers will be consuming 68 billion gallons of water a year. To give you some perspective on that number, that is enough fresh drinking water for nearly 15 million people for an entire year. And instead, it's all going to cool servers. So where is all this water actually going? Well, it's not just the obvious stuff, the water evaporating from the cooling towers right there at the data center. That's what we call Scope 1. But the real story, the bigger, hidden cost, is in Scopes 2 and 3. In fact, a staggering 60% of AI's water footprint is completely indirect. It's the water used to generate the mind-boggling amount of electricity these centers need. And it's the water used to manufacture the computer chips themselves. Okay, so this brings us to a really crucial question. If AI is drinking this much of our planet's water, who is actually paying the price? Because this isn't happening in a vacuum. It follows a very deliberate map, what you could call a geography of sacrifice. And this right here, this is the cruel, almost unbelievable paradox at the heart of the whole thing. These tech giants are building these massive, water-guzzling facilities in the exact places that can least afford to lose the water. We're talking about arid landscapes like Arizona and Nevada. And why? Well, it's cheap land and tons of sun for solar power. So they're chasing green energy while creating a massive water crisis. And you can probably guess who ends up paying the price for this, right? The burden falls squarely on specific communities. These data centers are often built near or even on indigenous lands where water rights are already contested. They're forcing world farmers to compete for groundwater. This isn't just an environmental problem. It's a profound injustice, especially for indigenous women, who so often are the primary custodians of water security for their entire communities. Okay, so I know what some of you might be thinking. Can't we just innovate our way out of this? Make the data centers more efficient. It's a common argument. But the source material we're looking at today argues that this is actually a really dangerous myth. And it all comes down to this really fascinating idea from economics called the Jevons paradox. Basically, it says that whenever technology makes using a resource more efficient, we don't end up using less of it. We actually end up using more because it gets cheaper and way more accessible. And this is how that trap plays out, step by step. You make the data centers more efficient, great. That makes AI services cheaper to run, which of course drives up demand for AI like crazy. So what happens? You have to build way more data centers to meet that new demand. And the end result is you're actually extracting more total water and energy than before. It's just a treadmill to collapse. All right, so after all that, this is where our story takes a wild, almost sci-fi turn. Faced with a problem that seems totally unsolvable here on Earth, a radical new vision is emerging. It's an indigenous-led solution that wants to fundamentally change where we do all of this computing. And that quote right there, that's the core idea from Jason Carter, the founder of Star Nations. It's such a simple, powerful idea, but it challenges this core assumption that all of our technological progress has to come at the expense of our planet. The idea is that water is for life, for people, for plants, for animals, not for machines. I mean, just look at the comparison. The logic is just so clear, isn't it? If you move this entire infrastructure into orbit, you completely change the math. In space, you have zero water use on Earth, zero land footprint, you have an independent, basically inexhaustible source of solar power. And waste heat? That's a huge problem down here. But up there, you just radiate it away into the vacuum. It literally sidesteps the entire crisis. But here's what's absolutely crucial to understand. Star Nations isn't just another tech company with a big idea. It's a movement, and it's guided by these really deep, long-held Indigenous values. It's all about environmental stewardship and something called Indigenous data sovereignty, the idea that Indigenous peoples have the right to control data from their own communities and lands. And the whole thing is guided by the 7-generation principle, always thinking about the impact of our decisions on our descendants 140 years from now. In this quote, this really gets to the core of that philosophical shift. For decades, the entire tech industry has treated data like oil, something you extract, refine, and sell for profit. The Star Nation's view is that data is kin. It's a living part of our relationships and our communities, and it needs to be treated with respect, not just as a commodity to be exploited. So what we're left with is a choice. A really clear choice, actually. And it's not just about what technology we use, but about what kind of world we actually want to build. The source material frames this as a really urgent decision between two very, very different futures. So what does that path forward actually look like? Well, the source material lays out some really concrete policy steps. In the short term, like the next 1 to 3 years, it means a moratorium on building new data centers in places that are already water-stressed. Medium term, we're talking about investing in Indigenous-led research and creating the legal frameworks for operating in space. And long term, the goal is a full transition of global AI computing to space-based infrastructure. And this slide just lays it all out, side by side, the two futures we're choosing between right now. We can keep going down the current road of terrestrial extraction, which leads to predictable water crises, grid collapse, and ecological damage. Or we can choose the Star Nations path, a future that prioritizes protected water and land, that centers Indigenous leadership, and that is built on intergenerational justice. And let's be crystal clear, this isn't some far-off hypothetical problem. The source material is adamant that the aquifers are depleting and the grids are straining right now. The crisis is already here. So the question it leaves us with is a profound one, and it's a question for all of us. What world will we choose to build for the next 7 generations?